Hey guys, it's Gio with Beyond Quotas. Last week we talked about the importance of prospecting. But my question to you is, do you even know how? Well, this week we actually are providing some tips around prospecting. You'll find some tremendous value out of our episode. We appreciate your feedback. You guys have a good one.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Off the Cuff. And this episode today, we're going to be talking about tips on prospecting. So last week, we touched on the importance of prospecting. And I mean, it's exactly that. It's important. So I think many people kind of got the gist of that after our conversation last week. And, if you definitely have more questions and you have feedback on that, definitely let us know. But now we're talking about the tips. So now that you understood the value of prospecting and why to prospect, do you know how to? Do you even have a clue what is the best way to start or what you need to do to start prospecting? And I think one of those things is objective, right?
Yeah. So this is the thing with the whole prospecting. We try to overanalyze everything. So what do I say? What do I do? This should I open like this? What media? The channels should I use? All this information that's going out there that we prevents us from actually doing it because we get fearful, we get scared of actually doing the wrong thing or whatever the case, or we make excuses that nobody answered the phone. But when it boils down to it, start off with an objective. What's the objective for the call? You got a handful of objectives. You got one, obviously set the appointment, and that's really a lot of times that's kind of the main focus. If you can just kind of look at it like I'm just looking to set the objective or set the appointment, that'll alleviate a lot of your fear and to move forward. But you also have gather information and qualify. Does this prospect actually qualify for my business? I don't want to waste my time with people that don't qualify. And also you have closing the sale. Now this is kind of a far fetched, like very few and far between that you'll ever actually close the sale. That someone's actually ready. They know who you are. They've been thinking about you. You just happen to call on the right day. But that's also obviously an idea as far as an objective, and maybe you have that last little bit that you're working on in the pipeline that you can kind of close that. But also, last ditch effort. If nothing else works, at least build awareness. So they don't know who you are when from the start, but you're giving some building that awareness. You're letting them know what you do, how you can help. Maybe sending information and whatnot. So that's kind of, and that's a lot of that, kind of touching back on the story that I gave in the previous episode. Having that objective gets you started, allows you to know exactly what I'm doing, why I'm calling or reaching out, and being specific and getting to the point, because at the end of the day, that's what the prospect wants to know. What's in it for me?
Right.
And having that set from the start helps you move forward.
So balanced approach, right? There's many directions you can take to reach out to a prospect.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you find have been most valuable to you, and are some key ones that people should think about?
Well, I'll give you kind of a handful of examples. Now, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but I think having a balanced approach in your prospecting efforts, that's going to get you the most effectiveness. So you have your phone, obviously. You have email, text messages. You have social media, if you want to run that route, obviously building that awareness. You have trade shows. You've got in-person prospecting. You've got cold calling. You got networking events. So a lot of different avenues that you can run. But the idea is to hit on different avenues, different channels. And also one thing I want to kind of touch on is make sure that you're taking notes and storing all those stuff as far as in your CRM. Excuse me. And making sure obviously you're writing down what exactly you said. You never want to give the same message twice.
Right.
I always believe that they've heard it, but making sure obviously you're different. Your email doesn't say the same thing over and over again. You're not hitting in the repeat, the same thing over and over again. But yeah, just having those different modes of communication, that's going to be the key for your prospecting efforts, and that's, to me, has been kind of the launching pad, so to speak. Once I figured that out, my success went through the roof.
Yeah. No, and I would have to agree with you on everything you're mentioning here, because it's funny, you're seeing all the different types of channels that you can use, and the one thing that happens very often is that you kind of look at whatever outlet you use and then you don't stay consistent with it. You basically say to yourself, I'm going to use an email, I'll stay in that route, or I'll use email, phone, social media, however you combine it. But you'll do one time shot and then expect that person should be responding. And you have to realize that is where the error occurs, is that you're not being consistent with your communication. Because think about the prospect you're reaching out to. Put yourself in their shoes. What are their responsibilities? How often is another supplier or another manufacturer reaching out to them for their time? Very often. What is their roles and responsibilities? You should know that when you're going and calling them anyways. So what is their roles and responsibilities? Pretty certain it's a full-time job, right? And they have many responsibilities that they're dealing with, especially if you're reaching out to them. They're more than likely a decision maker or at least a key champion in your account. So that being the case, this individual most certainly has not much time on their hands. So you have to find the right hook for them to really want to be able to give you their time. So, and it's not going to be delivered most often with one message. It's going to have to be consistent, or it's going to have to be a very empowering message that you send to them, whatever channel you choose. So consistency is going to be key throughout this whole process. Now for me, one of the stories that I can say is that end of last year, in my role, I work with a lot of direct and indirect reports. And some of my indirect reports were not consistent with their communication. They were hurting because their numbers were lacking. They felt like they weren't going to reach their target. So they reached out to me and they said, hey, you have a responsibility globally on one of these accounts. Can you help me with that in trying to get in the door? No problem. Here you go. Here are some names. Go ahead and start prospecting that I know of that would be willing to talk to you. And they sent out one message, and I was actually almost being consistent with them. Well, I was. And I reached out to them and said, hey, a month later, how did that go? Did you reach out to them? I did, but they never got back to me. Well, how many times did you reach out? Well, only once. In what way? I just sent them an email. Why is it only an email and why is it only once? And they didn't have an answer. And so what I did with them is I worked with them, and they themselves worked on just being consistent. I was just like, listen, not for nothing, just be a pain in the ass. I was like, just get that no or get that yes, whatever, but get an answer. And they're like, oh, fine. It was a little bit of a grumble. All right, fine. I got to do this, whatever. And funny enough, flash forward, it was like 2 months later, and they got contact. They were able to kind of move on an opportunity, but it was the consistency that got them there. It was the fact that they spent a little bit more time reaching out to the customer that built a relationship for them. The customer basically said to them, your first email went to my trash. And the reason why they were able to connect was because they ended up going a different route and choosing a phone call to reach out to them. And I've known of others that have been successful through social media. So don't just look at one avenue as your way of communicating. Pay attention to the fact of how important it is to have a balanced approach and using those outlets that you can.
Sure. Well, I kind of want to touch on that too, because as far as you mentioned, that one phone call, one email, a lot of us, we tend to think busy work. Like we've made over 100 calls in a day. It's been crazy when in actuality, we've made like 7. Because we've kind of confused the idea of the research and the busy work for actually calling, and that's the biggest thing. And with consistency, finding the time to do it, to do the prospect. Obviously, the consistency being, do it every day, but also finding the time to do it in your block schedule.
Yep.
I find it depends on what the industry you're in, but first thing in the morning, having a power hour of 1 hour a day. You're doing nothing but prospecting, and that's what I encourage everybody to do is just find that hour.
Mm-hmm.
Just block it out. That's an appointment for yourself, for your time. Nothing else matters. And what's called the Horseman's Corollary, as far as work contracts to the time you give it, as opposed to Parkinson's law, which obviously the work expands to the time you give it. But what it means is basically if you give yourself an hour to make 100 phone calls, or however many prospects you got, whatever, you're going to hit more prospecting calls in that 1 hour than you would have the entire week or even month, probably. So, dedicate that hour on a daily basis to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like you said, mix up the modes of communication. You're going to find your success level is going to go up.
Yeah, and I would say, going into timing, it's interesting because a lot of times as individuals in sales, we have a lot of balls to juggle. Mm-hmm. We're always moving and shaking in different directions. I have to write up a proposal. I have to call this customer back. I have to put out a fire. There's always something in your way. But the one thing that's going to probably make a tremendous difference, not only in prospecting, but in growing your pipeline, is your timing in your response to that prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because oftentimes we don't think that that's important, because I'll get to that person. The prospect finally reaches back out to you. I'll get to him. 24 hours, 48 hours pass. You're dealing with other things that you feel are more vital, like a proposal for a large project, which it is. Don't get me wrong. But do you know what your potential outcome could be or your value could be from that prospect? Well, you probably don't until you respond to that email, which could be a larger project than what you're working on today, mm-hmm. which could fill your pipeline to get you to the quota or target that you're looking for at the end of the year. So it's not only the fact that you have to get back to them, but in a timely manner. And expectations is if you got an email from that prospect, you're expected to respond within 5 minutes. Now, if you respond to them in 30 minutes, your percentage of loss of retaining that communication grows.
Mm-hmm.
So pay attention to the fact of how quickly you respond to your individuals or to your prospects, and you'll see that the quicker you respond and the more engaging you are, the more that these prospects turn into true customers, right?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else on timing?
No, I mean, I think that's the big, and just on the response, because especially if we're outside salespeople, if we got meetings or whatever the case, responding to an email within 5 minutes or any kind of scenario in 5 minutes is is far fetched a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can set up a lot of our emails, we can set up auto reply. Say, hey, I'm in a meeting, from this time to this time. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. As long as we have some type of response, some type of idea that you'll get back to us,
mm-hmm.
On a timely manner. Whether it is, within 24 hours. Hey, I'm on the road. I do that a lot because, I'm on the road a lot. So I'm currently on the road. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. They know that they should hear a response. So that's again, to your point with the 5 minutes, because it's ultimately that's
a response.
Yeah, that is. But
yeah.
Having that type of response to know, because most people, you and I personally know, they think that you're sitting behind a computer all day.
Right.
You're not actually out doing anything. You're doing this. So that's their mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just something, obviously, just kind of a quick tip to, maybe if you're thinking like, wow, that's, 5 minutes, even 30 minutes, that's a hell of a thing. But if you can actually just set it up to where you do respond
Right.
automatically.
Yep. No, and I say that because it's reality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if I always put the customer, I put myself in their shoes.
Sure.
Always. And if you don't do that, you should do that.
Yeah.
The customer, at the end of the day, you want to feel what they're feeling. You want to be able to give them the response that you would expect, if somebody's pitching to you, right? So if I'm reaching out to you, and you've been hammering me so often, okay, well, here's my response now. I respect something in a timely manner. Now, 5 minutes, yes, it might be difficult, but a response with an away message is a 5-minute response.
Sure.
If anything, it's immediate, right? But it's something that's telling me, okay, you've gotten my email, you understand the situation, and you're going to get back to me in X amount of time.
Sure.
Whatever that case may be. But the other thing, too, is that you have to be mindful that there's tools that are out there. Now, when we started talking, about what Beyond Quotas is and what we can do for many of our viewers and what we're trying to create here is not only the practice of simplifying your process today versus what you're doing in the past, but it's also about realizing that there's other formats that have been digitized, which normally you're doing it in a manual effort. And so why I say that is because there is a simple tool, and another tip is that if you have Microsoft Office, and so you have Outlook, you have the ability where there's on the top pane of your email window, you actually have the toolbar where you have a section where it says categories. And it'll give you some categories that you can choose. You can actually create a customized category, which in this case, for me, I did schedule. So when an email comes up that is of a customer, and if I am in front of my computer at that time, I would then go and click on schedule on one of the categories and categorize that email and set up an action so that it actually goes ahead and creates a reminder for me in a certain allotted time, so that I know within the next 24 hours I need to respond to that customer because of the importance that it is. So there's tools in place. Now that's just one little tip. There's many things that we can bring to the table here, but there's things out there. So don't think that you manually or you have to try to remind yourself the timing that you get back to. Use the things that are at your fingertips because they're available to you.
And one thing I kind of want to end on, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier about maybe doing a proposal or whatever the case. Don't mistake admin and non-selling activities with selling activities.
Yep.
Do non-selling activities, and I know we all hate to even think about this because, oh my gosh, it's more work.
Right.
From 8 to 5 or whatever the time is that you work, those are selling hours. Those are not non-selling hours.
Right.
Put your admin. I mean, don't get me wrong. You need to, obviously fill up your CRM and take detailed notes, but write notes on the fly. All non-selling activities, research on the prospect, putting in proposals, putting in whatever the case, needs to be done before or after. Because that email comes in, that hot new lead that comes in, and you're just like, well, I'll touch base with them later on. I got to work on this proposal. I got to do this. I got to put my load up my CRM because my boss is getting my ass. That's business.
Yep.
That's going to get your family. That's going to keep the roof over your head, the power on, and your kids fed. That's it. I've never actually put a CRM. I've never had a paycheck come in because of the CRM entries that I did.
Right.
I have had a paycheck come in by responding to the email of the hot new lead. And especially a hot lead. I mean, somebody reaches out for business. Shit, I'm stopping everything. I don't give a damn what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, whatever your priorities are,
Yeah.
you adjust that, right?
I think that a lot of times with us as salespeople, we kind of confuse the two. We kind of blend those two together because that's our job as
responsibilities, right? Yep.
Non-selling activities and selling activities. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you have to make sure that 8 to 5, whatever your schedule is. I would personally extend it, but whatever. That's prime for selling.
Yep.
Everything else can be done after.
Absolutely. Can't agree more. All right, everybody. Well, those are some tips that we have on prospecting. We hopefully that you found that it was valuable. listen, guys, we've been on this journey for a little bit here, so we really hope for you guys to go ahead and share some of the feedback that you feel or you find with what you've been listening to. Also, like our page, go ahead and share our page, the best you can. We really appreciate it because, to be honest with you, this is a way that we can spread the word. We will ourselves be prospecting, of course, right? But we also are finding that word of mouth is tremendous, and so we really appreciate any bit of that you guys find valuable, because we're here to really create a journey. So, anything to that?
No, that's it. Like I said, just like and share, especially on the YouTube channel, because that's kind of how we get that, especially, and also with our Spotify. Make sure you like it on that, because that's how we get ranked.
Yep.
And the more awareness we can have, the better off we'll be, just like in prospecting.
Yep, absolutely. Well, appreciate it. And we will see you next week. And thank you guys again. Have a good one.